the guys from Ping, they've kind of shown me how much the equipment matters.
I just love that I can hit any shot I kind of want.
We're going to be able to tell some fun stories about what goes on here to help golfers play better golf.
Welcome back to the Ping Proving Grounds podcast. I'm Shane Bacon. That is Marty Jertson, my man in somewhat matching purple. Is that fair to say? Derek Deminsky joins us now. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. Excited for this podcast. We've been meaning to have you on for a bit. I know you guys have known each other for a long, long time. I've been following you for a good amount of time on social media, but as we know with social media, I've never met you in human form till today.
Yeah, it's felt like we've played a few rounds, gone out a few times, but it's been official today.
Here we go. Marty, I would like you to start the pod by giving us a breakdown of Derek's golf game, start to finish. I know you've seen it up close over the years.
Off the tee, he's got a fade every single time, 100% of the time.
Reliable.
With the metalwoods. Iron game is solid and trending.
Chipping needs improvement or what?
Chipping is his little weak spot, but his ball striking's so good he hardly ever needs it on the course.
Is it weird to
Hear that?
is it weird to go from like a good player that, lives in Arizona and competes to becoming this like internet guy that people know of because of their short game? What has that been like to see random people come up to you and talk to you about chipping and pitching at an airport or something?
Yeah, so it hasn't come to that, I guess, thankfully, but I've known Marty for a long time. We've become good friends. He's roped me into Ping, which is what I wanted the whole time. I was like, oh, no, don't help me out with Ping or anything.
This could lead me to this.
No, please, no. But I'm just a golf junkie, so I remember the first time we met was at the Gallery North Course, and it was, I think, for the PPC or something.
Yeah.
You were just out there grinding. It's super hot. Marty's out there on the back of the range. I'm like, I know he works with Ping. I want to introduce myself. I've seen him on TV. He's like, major championship guy. And then we start talking like Mac O'Grady, and I'm like, this is my guy right here. And I think you played well the next day. And,
Yeah.
I did not. But we had great times, and here we are now.
Yeah, at the Bird, Marty. This is an unbelievable facility. If you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, you look behind us and you see why the ASU teams are as good as they are. I mean, I have been dreaming of the moment I get to go out there and hit some pitch shots here in a little bit. This is the real deal. So shout out to ASU for letting us use this, and Papago, a place I played a lot of golf. Marty, you've played a lot of golf. Annoyingly, you take like 6 months off of golf and then play in the Papago Monday game and shoot like 65.
Well,
that's kind of your MO.
It is fun. I get Mondays off with the day job. So, New Year's, Memorial Day, Labor Day, my 3 days I play the Monday Skins game here.
Is it the best Skins game in Phoenix?
It's still, and I think it's the longest standing. It's
Okay.
been going on for a long time. So yeah, it is fun. It's reliable.
Derek, have you spent a lot of time in Phoenix playing golf?
Yeah, I come up here quite a bit, some for instruction, but we both play in essentially every Southwest section event. So I'm up here quite a bit. And when I can team with this guy, I'm not saying we've gone undefeated, but the record books would show that. So it's a lot of fun playing with a tour player, and I just ride him and make a few chips and putts.
Can you just kind of walk us through your journey to this point? Because again, I mean, you've got a great social media following. It's a lot of fun to kind of follow what you do. I learn stuff from your social media, which is something I don't think I say a lot about. A lot of social medias out there, but you've kind of established yourself as this thing online, and now obviously you've got a great relationship with Ping. So can you just kind of walk us through your journey through golf to this point?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Minnesota. It's where I'm born and raised. Family's there. And grew up with a golfing family. My brother, my dad, my mom all played. And we grew up in Elk River, Minnesota. The team was extremely competitive. So we'd have like 100 kids try out for the golf team.
In Minnesota?
Yeah. So if you couldn't shoot like upper 70s, you couldn't make varsity. Like the JV team was shooting like low 80s. So after always being the shortest kid in basketball, even though I loved it, after skateboarding and then not really being that successful, went into golf and started to shoot kind of low 90s, upper 80s. This is about in the 8th grade. And I got the first golf book I ever got in 8th grade, the Dave Pell's Short Game Bible.
Yep.
So not a quick read. It was more of a Bible than maybe the Bible, I guess you could say. But I got really into it, and what I found is, I wasn't the biggest guy besides my looks now. So I didn't hit it that far, and I knew I had to find a way to score better. So reading that book, getting into short game, and then really seeing, for me, we would play these 9-hole matches, and I would miss every green and sometimes still do, but I could get up and down 9 times to shoot like even par. So it was incredible. I was kind of the short game guy a little bit then. So it's always had a special place in my heart. Got into the golf business, golf industry. And then as I started teaching, again, I teach all areas, but short game definitely has a special place. And that's kind of why it is so special to me, I guess.
Derek, what about your, some of the funnest things is to watch it in person, and I've experienced this. Others have seen online. What is when did your fascination begin with spinning the ball? One of the things that you can do that we're still trying to figure out, quite frankly, is how much you can spin some certain shots, especially shots that fly very short.
Yeah.
Which is a hard thing to do. I can outspin you with a full gap wedge, but I can't do it with some of these shots you hit around the green. When did your fascination with spin begin?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, like back in the day, I remember it was all you'd see it on TV, and that was kind of back in the late 90s when they were playing like the Balata ball. So it's like, oh, I want to do that on a full swing even. So I got my snake eyes wedge, and I looked for that Titleist DT spin ball because it said DT spin, so it had to have spun.
It's in the name,
right? So then it's like 90 yards out. We find a day it's like blowing 30 into me, and I'm like, man, I want to spin this so bad. So we kind of like explore that way. Never really did anything with it. And then as I started to kind of teaching it into short game, I just started to kind of hit some shots because I really used to not spin the ball. So it's not like I've always just been the spin guy. I was kind of grew up in that Dave Pelz, somewhat Phil Mickelson, hinge and hold, not that can't spin it, but to kind of use my hands like I currently do was kind of this process where I started hitting some shots. I recorded a video that's on my website maybe 8 years ago or so, and I could kind of make it stop, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. But then after that, really what made it take off was when I saw Tiger's shot at the Valspar. There was this video that went viral online, and it was Tiger at about 30 yards out, hits this high shot, and it's like, okay, cool, like it's gonna be high and stop, but it like checks and spins right and back. And I was like, no way, this is crazy. So I reached out to a ton of people, and a lot of them were like, oh, it's easy, you just do this. And we've seen it before.
Are you like emailing people, calling people?
Social media at this point, right? So social media probably started in maybe 10 years ago or just short of that. And that's where really only one person took me seriously, Chris Como. So then at that point in 2020 is when we kind of had this back and forth talking about this shot. And then I just took it on as a challenge to really just see what there was. And it'd be waking up in the middle of the night, trying stuff like all crazy golfers do. And at some point it kind of worked out, and I'm sitting on the couch with you guys.
So Derek, this is the shot Tiger hit. He hit, and he's in the gallery, right? Is that the one that he hit?
No, so the first one was at the Valspar in a practice round. I think when he finished second to maybe Paul Casey.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think. And then the one I think you're referring to, he hit another one like in the Zozo. I think it might have even been before he won, but it's in the Zozo. He's putting on this clinic, and you could probably YouTube this Zozo clinic.
I mean, this is super nerdy. I think I watched this shot yesterday, just so you know.
All these like oohs and ahs, like he's flighting all these shots.
Instagram.
But the first shot he hit, he taps this ball out there 15 yards, brings a ball and hits this high shot that spins right, like hits the ball, and everyone's like, whoa, and it just sounds incredible.
So you mentioned Tiger a couple of times. Who are your kind of spin idols, if you will?
Yeah, so Tiger Woods is number one. When I do my shots, I use the Bridgestone ball, Tiger's ball, but it has to be the one that says Tiger on it, where he's on the cover, because it just motivates me, I guess. So I would say he's number one.
Do you throw the ball back to your assistant if they give you a non-Tiger ball? Just give me the right ball. What are you doing?
I tape up my fingers.
Perfect.
And, no, I don't. But I use that ball, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But that ball is like the spinniest ball, and Marty's helped me as well as Eric and all of Ping, right? So I think that's kind of why we're such a great partnership as well, is we have these questions that you, Eric, the whole staff are actually interested in, right? When I reached out to all these people, they're like, oh, it's just easy. He plays this and he does this. And I reached out to a lot of great short game people even, And they kind of dismissed it. I'm like, no, I think there's something here.
Yeah.
And Como was like, let's go.
Let's have a
Yeah.
combo.
Yeah.
All right, so Tiger's one. Who else do you have on your list of the maybe not even the people you look up to in terms of spin, but like modern day golfers that
Sure.
you're impressed by with the way they can kind of manipulate spin and loft and things like that?
Jeez. Just a ton of players, right? So I would say to some amount, like Tiger's protege, like Justin Thomas.
Yep.
You see, just and any of the shots, right? The one that Joaquin Neiman hit. My buddy Matt Every was on the call, and he was like, "Whoa!" I think you might have been on that live with them. JT. It's funny because I'm a huge fan of like Steve Stricker, who kind of does some of the opposite stuff. He can still spin it,
Yeah.
but he's like a short game idol. Just all these, as I've taught and started to learn maybe why certain players can do things, and really started to understand more than just a model, but like why does Steve Stricker stuff work? Why does Sergio Garcia's stuff work? Why does these certain shots work? That's just kind of helped me, I guess, overall.
So it's almost more about studying process than player. It's almost more like how are they able to do X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I think that's where I've gotten to where I am. It's learning, and I've had some great resources, but also just seeing like why does Luke Donald do this? Why does a Brett Rumford do this? Why does Steve Stricker move this way? Why does certain people who do certain things, have certain body movements, and then what are they trying to accomplish? So it's an interesting puzzle that I just love so much.
Derek, one of the things I think I admire about you is you talked about Stricker chipping with a certain technique. It's different than Tiger and JT and some of the other players out there. How have you distilled what the tour players do? There are different techniques. I think I've seen you use the term long arc, short arc, right? And how do you take those and teach your club golfers, your mid to high handicap players?
I think where that has really helped me is just understanding when someone has a certain pattern, what their struggles would tend to be. I.e., when people are told to be wide and shallow in general, they're going to be underplaying the whole club, the whole system's moving so far off. And I'll be like, well, are you hitting it fat and thin a bunch? Like, oh, how'd you know? So just kind of knowing what their tendencies might be, and then we can help improve them just with a shot or a skill, right? So if they're super wide, low and inside, we can somewhat quantify it, and it's not quite this simple, but it can be. It's like, hey, I need you to use some amount of wrists and hit me like a wristy slice. That can tend to neutralize them. Contact improves. They can see a quick improvement. More than, hey, let's shorten that arc. Let's increase this. You can make it real simple that way.
Okay, cool.
What are some misconceptions about spin? Because I was chatting with you earlier. We're out here kind of like messing around with some wedges and stuff. And like, I think everyday people get taught that lower on the face spins more. You've got to hit it high to spin the golf ball. Like, what are you figuring out, running into, solving the problems of about spin that maybe you thought one way, that now you think the total opposite?
Yeah, so that would all those questions go to Eric Hendrickson and everyone at Ping, because even me, I'm learning new stuff all the time, right? And I'm sure, I've got bad information out there, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of common knowledge. We think that maybe this produces this. It's like, okay, I've kind of seen that. And then also there'll be things that I can take to Eric and Marty, where it's like, hey, I can hit on this part of the club. This tends to do this, and they can explain why. It's like, at this point, again, they're so smart. It's like, here's what I'm seeing. You tell me why. Like, I don't really know, but I can do this. I don't know really how, but you guys tell me, smarties.
I think, Shane, why Derek and Chris and the rest of our ambassadors do, and our players, we had Joe Mayo on a while back, is that push. They're pushing us. And when we don't know the answers, it means they're observing something in real life we need to try to figure out, and then try to feed that back into just that understanding of golf physics. And Derek brought up a good point that, hey, maybe I have bad information out there. In the scientific world, it's kind of you could say that facts have a half-life, because you can level up your knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, and maybe golf is the biggest sport about that, right?
Yes.
Because you think about the stuff you and I've talked about on this podcast that was true 10 years ago, that is the complete opposite these days.
Distance versus accuracy, and hit low on the face and things of that nature. So this has been great to have Derek on board to push us, come in and help do some of those fun projects, try to crack the code on those spin shots.
Yeah, and also the fact that you guys have the spinniest wedge makes me look pretty good.
We call that science friction.
Science friction, lots of compliance, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
How did the relationship start with Ping? Like, how did that conversation begin?
I always, Marty has always helped me out, like doing some driver fittings. Like he would always take care of me. Super nice. Every time I had an experience up at Ping, it was like incredible. They got, it's like, I'm hitting driver bad. And they're like, oh, try this. I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could hit it a little better and further. So Marty was just helping me send it. And then at that point, working with Chris, qualifying for that Shriners event, kind of this perfect storm, and then being up the road, and I know what Ping stands for and everything. So I was kind of like, oh no, don't help me out, or like, sure, yeah, I guess I'll go hang out at Ping. So it really was this hope that it would work out, and yeah, it's great.
Derek was a good case study, Shane. We've talked about that. On drivers, there's a relationship between distance and accuracy. Derek drives it very straight, but he's self-admitted not the longest player out there. So what we did with him is we put him in our Alta CB X-Flex shaft super counterbalance right up to the 46-inch limit. So that's a case where we actually went longer because he drives it so straight and put a premium on getting more.
Well, remember
more
the first time though, it was 48.
Oh,
Remember
it was over.
When it was to 40, I'm like, Marty, give it as long as I can. I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
And then what I do, I put it right in the bag.
Right
You're like,
in
you
the
don't
bag.
have to play this. It was like at Weeko Pile. I'm like, Marty, it's going straight in.
Yeah,
it's
it
just
was
like
really good.
it's like there's no barrier. It's super easy.
Yeah.
It's like, of course I was just going straight in. You're like, it was great.
Derek, your interest on social media has led you to, I'm assuming, some doors you probably didn't know you'd be knocking on or walking through. Tour players have come to you for advice, collegiate players, LPGA players. Who was the first tour player to reach out and you worked with, and how has that been personally for you to have people you see on TV and professional golfers want to pick your brain about golf?
Yeah, so I've worked with some like Tucson people in the past. Ronnie Black's a good friend, Don Pooley. But then like getting to know it and become friends with Max Homa, a mutual friend. Seeing him when COVID really started is when we kind of started working, and then just watching him grow, and obviously with his coach Mark Blackburn, he's got him so dialed in, and just kind of being a sounding board for a while and working with him there, and then not to have a little success like for him, and we've both seen it. He's just the hardest worker I've ever seen. He will do information right away. He's just an incredible talent. And then when you put that all together, and now he's won like 6 more times again, like with no real help for me. Such a talent, but it was really cool to see and hang out with him a bunch at TPC Scottsdale, and then who doesn't like Max Homa, right? If you don't like Max Homa, you're the problem. Let's be clear, like it ain't Max. So doing that, and then now it's just I consult for a lot of players. A lot come to Tucson. You meet some really cool people, and it's a wild ride, and it's doing what I love. I love teaching all of golf, but something special about helping short game to me that just, when you do that thing that makes you feel alive, or it's like, I don't even know what I'm getting paid. I don't care what I'm getting paid. Like, this is what I want to do. It's like teaching short game to really anyone, but like the high level players is special.
I'm actually interested in both of your thoughts on this, but I'll start with you, Derek. We talk so much about teaching golf. Is it a different approach to teaching a great player versus teaching an average player? Because they're bringing so many different skill sets to the table, but in theory, you're probably trying to get them to similar spots, right? I mean, in terms of contact or where they hit the ball or the way they're moving it through impact. I mean, I'm assuming the end goal might be the same, but the way you get there might be different.
The tough thing is a tour player, you can give them terrible info and they can probably make it work.
Okay.
They're so skilled and
Marty, we've
so
heard this,
so talented that I could tell them to use the opposite of the club. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get, depending on what their level is. But when you get a player comes in for a lesson, they miss your hand, trying to shake it. It's like, okay, we're going to try to get this club on this ball. Let's be clear. It ain't going to probably go that well. So knowing that, so then you really have to dial in things that they can do, what's reasonable, make it very clear so that they can have success. So that's really kind of a sneaky, fun challenge. It's like, if I can get this person to short game it, well, not, with no disrespect to them because it's a challenging game, but it's like, man, that's an accomplishment compared to these super high level players that really can do anything, which is why they're where they're at.
The way I'd answer that one, change from a fitting standpoint, would be that the high handicap golfer, we don't see them. They don't need to have as much variation in their short game. They can have one staple shot they rely on, let's say 95% of the time. And quite often they are not comfortable opening the face, right? So I want to flip that your way here in a second, Derek. But then the more skilled golfer, they're going to have more variety. They're going to move the handle around. They're going to lean it back, lean it forward, raise the handle, lower their hands for different shots. So that we will put them through a more advanced fitting protocol that stresses all those areas and make sure it works for the shots they need to hit on the course. Derek, for you, what do you see with the high handicap player? Do they fear opening the face? Can you get them to open the face? Is that something you teach them? I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on that.
It's very case by case basis. I get a lot. Something that I somewhat have a specialty in, I guess, is I'm a lot of people's last resort when they have the yips. So I've had people flying from all over. They're like, it's you or nothing. And you'll see some of these people, and it's like, man.
That's either a major compliment or a huge dig. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like, hey, you're my last resort.
This is it.
And you'll see them hit some shots, and I'm like, are you really playing? Are you doing this in front of your buddies? Like, this is, wow. So when that's the case, it's just getting any way that they can predict contact, getting comfortable with any style before we start moving up the chain to like, okay, we got to make pretty good contact, then we got to control it, and it's building this kind of learning foundation of, okay, well, then we can start to open the face. Same thing in bunkers, right? People have one speed when they come to me, they're struggling. It's called panic speed. Get me out of here. Boom, they can give it full gas, and this ball's going anywhere. It's very player to player in that regard.
I feel like teaching golf, I mean, if you were going to compare it to like a road trip, there are, high handicap players you're talking about, last resort type of players, that the road trip, like to get them to a next level, might be another city. It might be driving from Tucson to Phoenix or Tucson to El Paso. You're talking to a tour player, it might literally just be trying to get them to the next exit, where it's like, there's not that much you need to improve on, but if I can get you a mile better on this road trip, then it can be, it can be an enormous leap for you because it's just so incremental in terms of getting better when you're that high of a level of golfer.
I think that's what's helped me out even in my coaching. So I get a lot of players that see me for spin, right? They want to hit that spin shot. So we don't necessarily have to change form, change technique, change how they do anything. It's like, hey, we can add these shots, we can add these skills to your toolbox, and then head down the road.
Derek, what shot, or let's say you're on the golf course, what you walk up to your ball, what scenario and conditions get you very excited, like you're going to be able to melt this golf ball? You're going to be able to show off
That's a great question.
with the shot on the course.
So I really so if I had to set the stage, right? So it's a perfect live ball sitting up, right? TPC Scottsdale is a perfect example when it's like, man, how can I'm just going to spin this thing. And then if I can go, I kind of like, you can spin it. You see guys spin it from like 50, 60. That's fine.
Yeah.
But the one that opens eyes is when you're close and you can spin it. And people are like, I haven't seen that. So if I get it right about, my sweet spot's probably, if it calls for it, right? Because in tournaments, I'm going to try to be smart. But if it calls for it, something where it's a tight pin, maybe over something, great lie, maybe in that 10 to 20 yard range where I can just cut one up there.
So you're telling me you get excited about the shots that we don't want to hit. That's what you're telling me.
Exactly.
The ones I'm like, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm
Exactly.
going to pitch this 20 feet by and maybe I'll make the putt.
Yeah, and we both know you guys can both play, but I think it does help somewhat practicing those kind of unique shots because it's like, I can go have fun with this. And I think something that's helped me in events is I don't care how I look or how I play. Like, I can live with any result. If I had a terrible shot, no one's better at living with a bad result than me. So I think that gives me a huge advantage because I don't care how it turns out. So that helps me free it up, put myself in that practice mode, kind of lick my lips and be like, watch this. Oh. And then, I mean, it's just fun. It's just however it goes. It's great.
When did social media become a part of all this? Because, I mean, as I've mentioned, I mean, the social media side has grown. What's your relationship like right now with Instagram? Do you love it? Is it frustrating at times?
Yeah. So the great thing for me is it's all fun. I don't necessarily.
It's like an additional thing.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
What you do?
So the greatest thing that it's helped me do is meet great people, great coaches, great players. I don't need to make money off of it. If a video does well or bad, it doesn't really matter to me. I think I started kind of 8 or 9 years ago, and I was talking last night to George Genkus, his good friend, and we were both at like 1,000 followers or 2,000 followers, and I'm seeing him, and to watch him grow, and so we were kind of early adopters, I guess, in the Instagram era, which I probably should have done YouTube, honestly, if I'd talked to my younger self and be playing golf for fun for a lot of money. And then it kind of Instagram changed, TikTok came out, some of these other platforms. So like the algorithm or whatever you want to call it has maybe adjusted somewhat, but it doesn't matter. Like I'm still just putting out things I like. Oftentimes I'll get asked to speak about not goofy things, but like, how did you build your brand, or how did you, it's like, okay, I got on Fiverr and I got my logo, for $15. I sent it to 15 people. Put in 150.
Does this look okay?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, let me get 15 options. We'll do it from there. And then, again, just really being able to do it for fun, I think has really allowed me to have no pressure, right? So I'd be doing the same thing if I had 0 followers, same thing if I had whatever followers. But it's just because I love this game so much, and it's just I love teaching it, I love playing it. I think about it too much, and it's just like an addiction.
Shay, we did Halloween edition Scary Shots.
Yep.
And it was the like 40 to 70 yard bunker shot. This guy is probably the best I've ever seen at it.
What's the?
I would actually agree. I'm pretty good.
Yes,
I'm real good. I'm not gonna
Listen,
lie.
I'm gonna be
the
honest.
proof's
I'm
in the
not good at
pudding, though.
All right,
right?
so
Exactly.
can you
good.
walk us through your process?
It's
how do you
super
do
easy.
it?
It's the easiest process
Oh,
ever.
good. Now you're going Phil Mickelson on us. Look
yeah.
how easy this is.
So I'm not that smart. So here's what so when I have tour players come down, or at least college kids, and I'd ask you both of this. So your highest lofted wedge out of
60.
out of
61.
normal sand, when you make a full swing, how far does it fly?
Out of a normal bunker shot,
How far? Give me a number.
8 yards.
Full swing?
Oh, like I'm hitting a full shot.
Like it's a full bunker blast.
Oh, 30 yards.
Exactly?
I have no idea.
That's a problem.
20-ish.
Okay, so in a tournament, mine flies 30 yards exactly.
Full bunker shot.
Normal shot. So I know that. I have all my players calibrate that.
Okay.
So that's a knowledge thing. So when I get to a greenside bunker and I pull out my laser and everyone's like, what's this goofball doing? It's like, again, I don't care how I look, right? We've been clear about that. I don't care at all. I'll laser the pin and it's like, 30, it's like 31 pin. Oh, this is full.
Does your laser measure that short?
Well, so see, most people don't even know that. Yes, it does. So, and then if I got 40 yards, it's my next wedge. It's my 55. At 50 yards, it's my 50 degree. At 60 yards, it's pitching wedge. I had a shot this past summer. It was like 75 to the pin. I just looked at I've got my little matrix, and I said, oh, this is it was kind of sitting down, so I didn't want to hit like a shot. I was like, oh, it's just full 9-iron blast. It was 75 yards. I hit it to 15 feet because I have a system that I just feel like, again, I've never seen it hurt anyone to know those numbers, because then it can give you confidence in events when you need it. And I'm not trying to hit closer to the ball.
Podcast,
I'm
Marty.
not trying to do anything different. It's like, I love a 45-yard bunker shot because it's just it's a full 55.
We played together at Phoenix Country Club, the drivable number 6.
Yeah, you guys were all up there. I was in
Yeah,
that,
he's back in the
long
bunker back there. Kind of
Number 5. Yeah.
kind of wiped. Yeah, kind of didn't hit one.
I didn't make
great.
it
It's
over at
there.
any point,
Pins
so thank
back. I see him. It was like Rain Man. He got out this thing and doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, I walk up by the green and he hits up to like 5 feet. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then he holed about a 35
Yeah,
yard bunker
let's
shot.
go. Hey,
Perfect for
come
birdie.
on, dude. We were coming back, Marty. Birdies.
Yeah, we came back. We came back.
Coming back.
Beat the amateurs.
Yeah, take down the amps. I've never, again, I mean, you think about how much you focus on the game, and to think about never knowing how far I hit a full bunker shot is I'm 39.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it once.
So I've kind of developed these protocols, things I like every tour player to have. I have a lot of high level kind of D1 players that I help out too. I have these certain metrics that I like you to know, just because, again, like when I had that 75-yard bunker shot in Minnesota, the ball was sitting down, I had a solution to the question the course asked. I didn't have to practice it ever. I just was like, okay, this is the plan, and then let's do it.
What is the checklist you ask the players that come your way to have answered?
Yeah, so when it comes down to it, it's like having certain shots and skills, right? We can simplify it, and there's much more to this, but it's like having a good ball first skill in short game, having a good ground first short skill in short game, out of the bunkers knowing certain numbers, from 30 to 100 knowing certain numbers. Again, even if you don't use them. So I like my players to be more planned than the guy or girl that they're going to play. And then it's just like a cheat sheet when you're on the golf course.
Do you do any of that with putting as well? Any of that framework go to putting?
So I haven't yet, but I feel like there is a need, because if I teach someone, and this is what I found in teaching, it's my job to meet them where they're at. If they don't want to practice, I've got to figure out a solution for them. I don't need them to practice per se. If they don't want to, that's on me. So at that point, if someone comes to me, they say, I plan my annual work event. How do I hit a 50-foot putt? I should have a solution to that. So what we can do is we can start to use their feet, spread them out, and say, hey, if we have a certain metronome number and we do a certain stroke, I think this is where you're going to get close. Or we can have them kind of measure three stance widths, because I've got to give them a solution. Again, like, I don't need them to practice if they don't want to, but I better give them a good solution, explaining, hey, if you're not going to practice, these maybe goals you have are not attainable. But if you don't want to practice, I better be able to give you somewhat of an answer, whether I want to or not.
You did that with my kids in putting. I remember. They just took their normal stance with. My kids their putters going all over. So just to the foot, boom.
Exactly.
They're rolling the rock.
Yeah, they're rolling it pure.
I mean, what a way to think about it, where it's really teaching per player. I mean, we've talked a lot about that with different instructors, where it feels like the old school way was, here's my system, I'll match you to my system.
Yeah.
And now it's a lot about, I'm going to try to figure out the best case scenario for you. And I mean, I've thought about it in terms of swing and body type, and Mark Blackburn talks a lot about this. I mean, talk about matching who you are, to what you're capable of doing, what your body's capable of doing, but even the commitment to time and ability to practice and what your goals are at the end of the day. I mean, it's so interesting to think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, again, I think that's where I've become a better instructor, is because, I'd be like, well, you got to find, not that I would ever say it, but like, well, can't you find time to practice? And again, you guys have, kids, family, and all that. And then also what you've realized after teaching for so long is people who practice don't necessarily get any better, right? They get vitamin D from the sun, they get sweaty, they get frustrated, and the time spent doesn't equate to better scores. So at that point, I don't want you to waste your time. I'd rather you go play. So if I teach a lot of working people, and I'm like, I want to give you easy solutions, and I need you to go play and have fun. I don't want you to go beat balls at the range. Again, where you're maybe doing something that we're not working on, you're maybe regressing or doing something poorly. I want to give you good solutions. You go play, you just have better answers.
Derek, what do you like more, playing or teaching?
So what helps my teaching is I love playing the game way more, and I love to teach.
So you like them both? Win-win.
I love them both.
Win-win.
But playing, so making my game in season, my game's a priority. So someone's like, can you squeeze me? And I'm like, no, I can't. I got to practice, or I got to play. So by doing that, though, it shows your students, the commitment when needed. Also, when you go and do playing lessons and hit shots, I've never seen it be bad for a coach to be able to hit great shots. Not that they have to, right? You don't have to be a great player to coach well. But I've never seen a student not, when you're hitting some great shots and, you're kind of lighting up the green and it's looking pretty good for you. I've never seen a student be like, bummer, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. It just can add value added.
It's only to be helpful. Can we talk about the new wedges? Because, yes. I mean, the S159s are so, beautiful. I think that's what's kind of blown me away the most. But it feels like, and I don't think you're going out on a limb to say this, they're the best wedges Ping has ever made. And for somebody that's obsessed with spinning the golf ball and in and around the greens, I'm sure when you saw those for the first time, it was probably like a bit of like a Christmas birthday kind of combo.
Yeah, and again, Ping is so great in every area. wedges haven't done as well as maybe, Ping would want. I'm sure, right? It's well known to some extent there. But now with the app, with the simplicity of the wedge lineup, with the look, with the options, with the bounce options, and then having again, I'm in the friction business, so it's like the spinniest club. I see you back there, Friction Man. It's the spinniest club in a high friction environment, and then it's just so much better in a low friction environment. So for what I do, it's great. But again, playing all the Ping stuff, right? Ping Woods, how well do they do? I mean, you guys are posting non-staff guys playing Ping Woods night and day, right?
I think it's a humbling thing. Would say very well. Would be
exactly right. So it's going very well, and then I feel like now, like again, Ping has had, but like their wedge lineup and product is so good. And again, before I played in the Shriners, I had another brand, and it was like, okay, you probably don't want to switch that before you go in. You gave me the wedges out of the bunkers; they were incredible, and then off the ground, I'm like, these are going straight in, and it was just like from day one, they did everything I wanted and more. And then being in the friction business, they make me look better than I probably am.
What is your typical kind of gapping? How do you do your gapping on your own wedges there?
So I've always liked 60, 56, 52, 48, but now modernly it's 60, 55, 50, and then 45.
Okay, yeah.
So always been a 4 wedge guy, and just Dave Pellis told me so.
Marty, what's your gapping right now?
61. Then a 56 at 55, 50 at 50 and a half, and then my Blueprint S pitching wedge.
Okay.
So yeah.
You've never, have you gone 4 wedges before? I mean, obviously you're using the wedge out of the set. Have you ever gone like the 4 wedges, and why the switchback, I guess, is what I
asked. So the set wedge, the Blueprint S pitching wedge, and I went to 4 wedges when I went from Arizona to Colorado, because then my gapping just exploded, and I was like, you get up there in Colorado and you were driving it far, and then you have a lot of 120-yard shots at a huge gap. So I got the gaps kind of dialed in, and I've kept that ever since. I've really enjoyed that. It's a skill to be able to develop, to be able to hit those tweener wedges. That's actually something I need to work on a little bit. This year we heard from Preston, who right here, literally out back here.
You got to talk about. When's our tea time?
Yeah, when we did our podcast with Preston, and he did his strengths and weakness analysis off of his previous year. It was his number one thing he wanted to work on was his wedge gapping. He's got not a bad spot to work on it right out there.
Come on, bro.
I mean, it's a bit silly if you can't see behind us. And we'll probably show it if you're watching the YouTube clip of this. But at the Bird, you can basically dial everything within 5 yards of every shot. I think up to 125 or 130. So. If you're not a great wedge player while you're at ASU, it's your fault. I think that's like Derek saying, I can try to make you better, but you probably have to put a little time in.
Derek, what mistakes do you see some of your students come in with in terms of their wedges or maybe their lob wedge? First question. And second question related to that is, do you like to teach your players to use 2 wedges, or do you want them to be like, we heard Tiger and Annika, hey, 60 degree, learn how to use it from everywhere?
Yep.
So for myself growing up, I've always used, again, every time I have a shot, you've seen it, unfortunately. It's like, why is this guy bringing this whole bag up to the shot? Well, I always bring my 4 wedges, and I like my last wedge to be my W. I don't like playing like a 48 there because I want it to not spin. So I want it to be somewhat of a set wedge in a sense that it won't check up when I want to hit it lower and have it not spin. Based on that, the question of what do you want a student to do? Short term, if they don't have time to practice and they like one club, I'm just going to have them wear that club out, right? We can work on some landing spot stuff. We can do some stuff like that. But then I say, hey, maybe long term, here's where, I feel like over time, we can start to put the odds in our favor as we start to do less work. If I'm going to carry the ball less, have it, be more predictable with spin, I feel like I'm doing less than a lot of people. Again, you see the social media stuff. When I play, I try to remove spin to be a little bit more predictable when I need to. So I feel like on stock short game shots, I'm doing less than most people. So I want that maybe for a long-term college player, professional, but it's whatever is working, right? So if someone comes to me and they say, well, geez, I don't really want to change this. And I say, well, your stats say you're last. So we can kind of keep that in mind, but I wouldn't keep anything you're doing, right? Or maybe they're doing something where the stats say, hey, the stats back this up. So we're going to look at that before we, make too many decisions.
Marty, it's interesting you asked that question. I feel like that's something I struggle with a bit in my game is I'll walk up to a shot and I will almost allow myself too many options.
Yeah.
It's like an easy chip shot, and it's like maybe it's 56 and it's kind of low with like a little bit of spin, or maybe I get to the 50 and do the same thing. And I've been trying to lean a little bit more into just taking the one club up to the green. Like if you're riding a card or you're using your push card and you get it over to the side, it's like just take one, so then you only have one option. Because I play 4 wedges, and I mean, it is easy to kind of get lost in the process as opposed to just going up there and going, I know I can make this shot work with this club as long as I completely believe in it.
I'm guilty of that. Getting over that chip shot, I'm about to hit it, and I got my 4 clubs there. Swap it out. It doesn't feel right. Swap it out.
It goes back to it's always typically the first choice is
Exactly.
almost the right one to go with.
Yeah, trust your instinct there a little bit.
Yeah, and I think for that, right, so when I bring up 4, my process would be I'm kind of trying to find that flattish spot, 2 to 3 steps on the green or wherever's reasonable. If there's no slopes or anything, we can negate that. But I'll kind of find a spot, and then just doing it for so long, it's like, okay, then what club fits that window? And then it's like, okay, there's my club choice. So I'm kind of, it's like I could land it here or there, but I've kind of trained myself to kind of see the same kind of spot I want to land it and roll it out. And then it's pretty easy to decide from there. But I can understand, like, well, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. So at that point, that's where the benefits of, one club to just be like, hey, this is what you got to do.
When you have college players or young professionals come to you for advice around the greens, what do you feel like is a shot that they consistently either struggle with or they're trying to get answers for? Because when you play golf with really good players, a lot of the standard shots they're good at. What's one that maybe they all kind of ask you questions about?
Yeah, short game's weird because some players will reach out because they're like, hey, I'm feeling kind of yippy.
Okay.
Right. So at that point, it's like, okay, how do we solve that?
How do you solve that?
So it's very player based, because I've got some videos of some yippers that you couldn't believe. So it's very player based, but it's essentially changing the way that they do things. Because usually, in my case, I've never found it to be just mental. It's a poor technical way to do it that over time, if I had to do it that way too, I'd be in basket case as well. You're not having success. How can you picture success? Like, you're seeing bad shots. I would be pretty negative too, right? I mean, we haven't seen any success. So the yips are a little bit player to player. I get a lot of players for spin, right? So that's kind of a forte of mine. But then I'll get a lot of players who they're like, things are okay, but my stats don't back it up. So I've developed some ways that I like to see people practice with hitting some certain landing spots. I've got some metrics for if you have a certain shot, what the landing zone should be, and that's where Scott Fawcett's come down to do some work on that. So it's really, even in short game, it can be like, well, I'm hitting this shot, but it just kind of feels this way, right? So it's not quite full swing coach in that regards, but it can just be these almost weird requests at times, where it's like, well, why does this do this? And so it's can be general and it can be very specific.
Yeah. Derek, let's talk a little bit about that marriage of teaching and fitting. We talked to Boyd Summerhays on the pod. He was like, if there's ever an issue with performance, I'm looking at the equipment first, right? Because he said Tony and Preston, they're kind of proud. They're not complainers. But quite often, hey, maybe if you're hitting your 7-iron right, maybe the line goes off or something, right? What is that indication if you get a player down there? Everything's looking good mechanically, but they might not be in the right grind. What do you see in the results? How do you diagnose that? How do you marry up the fitting, the grind fitting with instruction?
Yeah. So oftentimes, again, if someone's struggling, or just kind of, have some members at the club, because I teach a lot of high-level players, and then at our club we have members from 5 handicaps to new golfers, right? So when they come in, and I might just see a club and I'm like, man, that club's way older than me. They just stick it in the ground because it's like a knife. I don't even know if bounce was invented yet. So I'm like, man, congrats. Like, this is kind of what you should be doing. I'll let them try my club. I'll let them try some other things. Like, oh man, I didn't know that. Once you explain the technology, how to use maybe the bottom of the club if that's something they struggle with. And then from there, giving them some different options, asking what type of terrain, sand, shots they like to play, so that we can kind of further dive into. And I think that's where, some of the new stuff with the ping fitting app is going to be special.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the app is sensational. It's just simple to simplify all this stuff down to questions golfers can actually answer is such a unique thing, Marty. I mean, I tout this all the time. I mean, the innovation around ping has just been so cool because it's so easy to, not easy, but it's easy in theory to present new technology and say this stuff's the next best thing. But to explain to a golfer why they need it or if they're using it the right way, I always go back to the adjustable drivers. When they first came out, it was an amazing technology, but average golfers had no idea how to figure out even what to do with the driver until it was simplified to a way where you could actually go, okay, if I click it open here, then this adds 1 degree or takes 1 degree off.
Exactly.
And wedges, I mean, we've talked about it here. We've talked to some other of the short game geniuses around ping, and I feel like the grinds and all of the options around wedges make sense, but it's very hard for an everyday golfer to understand which one they even need for the golf course they play or the area they live in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Shane, in wedges, people get paralyzed by what all the different grinds of all the different manufacturers. So the big friction point or pain point we try to solve with that app is not only the grind, get you in the right grind, or down to 2, you can then go demo, try out, and chip. But also we see a big problem with the gapping. And that's why I asked Derek about gapping, is how do you gap your set? Because we see it all the time. They don't have the right spacing in their wedges, and it's costing them a ton of shots. So the app kind of solves both those things.
Derek, have you ever thought about going like 70-degree wedge or 75-degree wedge, just see what you can do with it?
I would guess my dad, he tends to get some of the infomercial clubs. He might have that option, right? I've seen that, the 80-degree wedge. Again, at the
to hit you in the nose
at the club. I've seen every late night TV golf club. When they come up and they're struggling, it's like, well, they've got this club and this club. Okay.
Would there be any compliance on an 80-degree wedge? That's my question for you.
You know what? If anyone was going to make that ball comply, it's going to be me.
It'd be you.
But Eric Hendrickson would probably say otherwise.
Well, Derek, fascinating to hear your story. I mean, one of my favorite follows on Instagram. It's a treat to actually meet you in 3D human form. It's always nice when you get to do that with people. But keep grinding because, like I said, it's cool to have you as an ambassador. It's cool to have you in and around the ping team, and it's just fun to see what you're able to do, with the wedges because not a lot of humans on planet Earth can do what you do.
Yeah, and it's really a win-win. I think it's a bigger win for me than ping because I get to utilize their resources. It's like going to a library, and I'm excited to go there. It's like, I'm gonna bug Eric.
So
today.
is Marty the librarian?
Well, no, I think
it's a symbiotic relationship.
I'm kind of like, hey, Eric, what are you doing tomorrow? He's like, got all these things. I'm like, do you want to hear me talk about what I'm seeing? And can you draw some cool drawings for me?
Yeah, Marty's card catalog is just his laptop of design features on the clubs. Yeah, it's like I said, it's awesome to have you a part of it, and thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
This is the Ping Proving Grounds podcast.